Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thank you so much for tuning in here on Friday, August 23rd. Jaguars game day. Jaguars taking on the Falcons tonight in Atlanta, 7 p.m. Final preseason game of 2024 for the Jaguars. I'm excited about it. Excited to watch this football game. Excited to see some starters. Obviously, that also comes with some nerves in a preseason game, a meaningless game for all intents and purposes. But the reason the starters are going to go out there from a coaching perspective is because they want these guys to have more cohesion, more chemistry, more time on task when they have to take on the Miami Dolphins in about 16 days in Miami, right? So there's going to be starters out there for a while for the Jaguars, it looks like. But as important as it is for those guys to go look good against what's likely going to be a lot of Falcons backups, you've also got position battles. Not starting position battles necessarily, but guys trying to fight for a roster spot. And that's what we're going to talk about here on this show. 5 position battles to watch at the back of the roster, trying to make the Jaguars 53. We're going to talk about that here today. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out genjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear. You can become a channel member here on YouTube as well, get access to some cool perks, help support the channel even more. So again, Jaguars at Falcons tonight. The Jags have a number of positions where there's going to be players fighting for roster spots. And we've got the 5 top position battles to watch from my vantage point. You can really look at almost every position and say there is a little battle here and there, but I wanted to get it kicked off with wide receiver. I think the battle between Tim Jones, who is that steady special teams presence, he can do the dirty work on offense, and I always say that, but his ability to block, his ability to understand the offensive concept, it's critical, and it's one of the reasons he's still in Jacksonville along with his special teams. Elijah Cooks, big-bodied, physical receiver, can go up and get the football, has not had the most impressive preseason so far. A guy who forced the Jaguars' hand, made them keep 7 receivers last year because they did not want to let Elijah Cooks go as an undrafted free agent. Joshua Cephas, a player a lot of folks had expectations for, including myself, has shown some things in practice, certainly. But since the lights have come on in the preseason, it hasn't been pretty for the undrafted free agent out of UTSA. But this is a guy that has very good route running chops. He's got length. He's got explosiveness. He's quick off the line. He's a good route runner. I think there's some good throttle ability in his routes. So can he show out, right? Austin Trammell. He's been dynamite for the Jaguars. He's more of that slot receiver type when you look at his body type. But the Jaguars already have Christian Kirk, Parker Washington, and even Devin Duvernay, who can play outside. He showed that in Baltimore, but more of that body type as well. So does Austin Trammell just not have a chance to make it because of the type of player he is? I'm not sure. Seth Williams is a player who's been around in Jacksonville for a few years competing for this roster. Hasn't made the 53, but he's someone who makes plays. He's another big-bodied guy, kind of like Elijah Cooks. Denzel Mims, former high draft pick for the Jets, has bounced around a little bit now. He has made plays throughout training camp, no doubt about it. And Joseph Skates is another big boy, another big guy trying to fight for this roster. I think that those players, all those guys I just mentioned, are fighting for 1 or 2 spots. Most likely 1, in my opinion. I think the Jaguars are going to keep 6 receivers. 5 of those receivers are already locked in. So you've got a lot of players that have done good things at times during their time in Jacksonville. Most of them will not make the 53. Certainly, I think you could expect some of them to be on the practice squad. Backup offensive line is interesting as well. Cooper Hodges has not been great coming off the knee injury, going into what is really his rookie year after missing all of last year with that knee. He hasn't been great, but he's close to a lock. The Jaguars really like him. They drafted him in the 7th round last year. There's not been any negative talk about Cooper Hodges, which there really hasn't been any negative talk about anyone on the roster. So that's neither here nor there. But I think the Jaguars value Cooper Hodges' skill set. I just think that he's got a little bit of a ways to go at this point. I think Blake Hance is someone who has a lot of versatility for the Jaguars. They've put him out there at tackle. They've put him at guard. He's a backup in this league. Not an elite player. Neither is Tyler Shatley, Cole Van Lannon. But these are guys fighting for roster spots. Like I said, if Cooper Hodges is locked in, that means you've got your starting five. You've got Luke Fortner, who's not going anywhere as a third-round pick a couple years ago. Cooper Hodges, that's 7. Walker Little, that's 8. Right? Javon Foster, that's 9. Who makes the roster beyond that? I'm really not sure. Again, Tyler Shatley has been with the Jaguars forever. Cole Van Lannon has impressed this year. Blake Hance is someone they've talked very highly about in the past. Darrell Williams is somebody who on the interior doesn't get talked about much, but he's a guy that's competitive. I've seen as many good reps from him on the interior as any of these other backups this year. Absolutely. Keaton Sutherland and Stephen Jones are there as well. So you got a lot of guys fighting for not very many spots. Switching to the defensive side of the ball, where I think as much as there is intrigue at offensive line and wide receiver, there's a lot of guys playing really well on the defensive side of the ball too, for fighting for a few spots. Interior defensive line, you've got a lot of players locked in there. But Tyler Lacey, 4th-round pick last year. Jeremiah Ledbetter, someone who since arriving in Jacksonville has been a playmaker. Jonathan Marshall has made a lot of plays on the interior. Doesn't get talked about very much. And then Aseze Otomewo has been really good. And you assume Jordan Jefferson is safe for this roster as a 4th-round pick this year. But all these guys that I mentioned at one point or another during this training camp or preseason have either been very consistent or flashed. And so the Jaguars have decisions to make there. It's possible none of those players we just mentioned, Tyler Lacey, Jeremiah Ledbetter, Jonathan Marshall, Aseze Otomewo, make the team, which is kind of wild because they've all been very good. And then at edge, I think you've got your top 3 locked in: Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Trevis Gibson. What else do the Jaguars do here? DJ Coleman, Miles Cole, Joe Gaziano, who just got here about a week ago. Breeland Speaks, been here for about, 2.5 weeks. Raymond Johnson. DJ Coleman has been a favorite of the coaching staff since getting here as an undrafted free agent last year. Miles Cole, a 7th-round pick, has been better than I expected. Joe Gaziano comes in, signed a day before preseason week 2, 3 pressures, a sack that, practically ends the game. Breeland Speaks has done a lot, former high draft pick who kind of didn't go his way early on in the NFL, but UFL Defensive Player of the Year. And then Raymond Johnson, who has spent some time in the league as well. So do they keep 4? Do they keep 5? I personally think that they're leaning towards 4 because of the fact that Eric Armstead can play defensive end, Mason Smith could do it, Roy Robertson-Harris can do it, Tyler Lacey, if he makes the team, can do it. So I think they're going to lean more towards having the big boys on the defensive line. I really do. Having those hulking presences. You look at Ryan Nielsen's defenses over the last several years, and then just going back to what the Saints have done, that's the tree he comes from. They like big defensive ends. And so I think that they're more likely to keep more interior guys that can also play on the edge than keep extra edge players. We'll see, though. And then cornerback, I think Christian Braswell is pretty much a lock. But the rest of these guys we're about to talk about, I'm not sure. Buster Brown, he has made plays throughout training camp, but this is a new defensive scheme, a new defensive coaching staff. Do they value him the way the past coaching staff valued him? I'm not sure. DeAndre Prince, mid-day 3 pick for the Jaguars this year. I think he's played well. I think he has shown that he's a smart football player. He's shown his athleticism and aggressiveness as well. So I would guess he makes the team. But you've got Amani Oruwariye, who has played really well as a veteran. He's made a lot of plays out there. Trey Flowers has made a lot of plays out there. Eric Hallett is another guy that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, but he's made plays too. He's gotten, I think, 2 interceptions in camp. And then Tavon Campbell, another player who has, had to play snaps in the regular season for the Jaguars, he's done some things as well. So I think that those are the top position battles. You can also certainly look at what might happen at the back end of the safety room. You've got Terrell Edmonds playing well, Adrian Amos, Andrew Wingard likely headed to IR, Tashawn Gibson suspended. So there's intrigue. Daniel Thomas, I saw him in a boot earlier this week. Don't want to speculate there, but that's certainly something. And linebacker, yeah, like is Yasir Abdullah a lock for the team? I think he has some versatility. Caleb Johnson as well, a big-time special teams player. So there's position battles all over this roster, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Josiah DeGuara has had a great camp. The Jaguars kept 3 tight ends last year. I think those 3 are still locked in this year, but Josiah DeGuara is making it tough for them. And then the running backs, they kept 4 last year. Keelan Robinson, likely an IR candidate, has not been able to play much, the rookie out of Texas, who they really brought in special teams value first, running back and offensive value second. Jalen Jackson and Gary Brightwell have played very good for the Jaguars. So this game is huge, and Ryan Nielsen talked about it. He was asked, I don't remember if it was me or somebody else, honestly, at this point, but he was asked a question that led him to say, I am really thankful that we have another preseason game to evaluate, because he said, I think this was on Monday or Tuesday. He said, these last couple practices in this preseason game are going to be huge for this evaluation. And they will be. And roster cuts are on Tuesday. So keep an eye on these position battles. These are guys fighting for jobs. And again, it's 7 p.m. tonight. Jaguars at Falcons in Atlanta. I'm going to be locked in. Probably get that recap out for you guys as soon as the game's over. Get on here and talk about this football game and how it goes. It'll be a late one for sure, but that's probably how we will handle it, if not first thing in the morning. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out genjag.com/shop. Pick up some Duval gear. Become a channel member here on YouTube. Y'all have a good one.